Welcome to the English Chapter.
Read world-famous books and master professional English.
Welcome back to the English Chapter, the show where we read world-famous books and discuss them in English so you can learn and grow with us. I'm Liam.
And I'm Maya, and today's book is Deep Work by Cal Newport. And I have to say, this one made me genuinely uncomfortable, in the best possible way.
Here is the question Newport opens with. When was the last time you sat down to do something important and gave it your complete, undivided attention? No phone, no notifications, no switching between tabs, just you and the work, for a solid hour or two.
If you are struggling to remember, you are not alone. Newport argues that most of us have lost the ability to truly focus. We check our phones dozens of times a day. We reply to messages the moment they arrive. We sit in meetings while secretly scrolling. And all of this, he says, is quietly destroying the most valuable skill we have.
Newport calls that skill deep work, and his central claim is striking. The ability to focus without distraction is becoming one of the most valuable skills in the modern economy. And at the exact same time, it is becoming increasingly rare, which means the people who can do it have a serious advantage at school, at work, in their careers.
And here is why this matters specifically for you as an English learner. Deep work is not just about career success. It is about the quality of your thinking. Your ability to sit with a difficult idea in English, really sit with it, and understand it deeply, rather than skimming the surface and moving on.
By the end of this episode, you will know what deep work actually is and why most people never experience it. You will have the specific techniques Newport recommends to build focus as a real, trainable skill. And you will walk away with practical exercises you can start today, whether you are a student, a working professional, or someone simply trying to think and communicate better in English. Okay, let's start with the claim that stopped me cold the first time I read it. Newport says, and I am quoting him directly here, busyness is a proxy for productivity.
Say that again?
Busyness is a proxy for productivity. And that word proxy is worth pausing on. A proxy is a substitute, something that stands in for the real thing. You might hear this word in professional or academic settings. For example, someone might say, attendance is often used as a proxy for engagement, meaning we measure who showed up because we cannot easily measure who was actually paying attention. So when Newport says busyness is a proxy for productivity, he means we have started measuring how busy someone looks instead of what they actually produce.
And when you think about it, this is everywhere. People wear busyness like a badge of honor. I am so busy. I have back-to-back meetings all day. I barely have time to eat. And we treat that as a sign that someone is important, valuable, indispensable.
That word indispensable is a great one to know. Indispensable means absolutely necessary, someone who cannot be removed or replaced. You might say, she is indispensable to the team, or good communication skills are indispensable in any career. But Newport's point is that looking busy has become a way of performing indispensability rather than actually earning it.
And most of that busyness, he argues, is shallow work. Replying to emails, attending meetings that could have been a message, reorganizing your to-do list. These activities feel productive, they look productive, but they rarely move anything meaningful forward.
And the English learning parallel here is uncomfortable. When you scroll through vocabulary lists without really absorbing them, when you watch videos in English without truly listening, when you read an article and could not explain it 5 minutes later, that is shallow English learning. It feels like studying, it looks like studying, but very little is actually sticking.
Deep English learning looks completely different. It is slow, deliberate, and a little uncomfortable. It means reading one paragraph and making sure you genuinely understand every sentence before you move on. It means writing something and revising it until it actually says what you intended. It means being fully present in a conversation, not just waiting for your turn to speak.
Here is your first exercise. The next time you sit down to study English, choose just one thing, one paragraph, one short article, one conversation. Set a timer for 30 minutes and give that one thing your complete, undivided attention. Notice how different it feels from your usual study session.
Here is the claim I found most comforting in the whole book, and also the most challenging. Newport says the ability to do deep work is not a talent you are born with. It is a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained.
Which sounds simple, but the implication is significant. If you struggle to focus right now, if your attention jumps every few minutes, if you cannot sit with one task for more than 20 minutes without reaching for your phone, that is not a personality flaw. It is simply a muscle that has not been exercised. And muscles respond to training.
But Newport goes further. He says most people are not just failing to train their focus. They are actively training themselves to be distracted. Every time you pick up your phone out of boredom, you are teaching your brain that boredom is dangerous and must be escaped immediately. Every time you abandon a difficult task the moment it gets hard, you are teaching your brain that difficulty is a signal to stop.
And here is a phrase worth learning: to compound. When something compounds, it grows on itself over time. Interest in a savings account compounds. Skills compound. And unfortunately, bad habits compound too. Every distracted day makes the next one slightly easier to repeat. Every time you choose shallow work over deep work, the gap between where you are and where you could be gets a little wider.
Newport also introduces a concept called attention residue. This is one of the most useful ideas in the book. Residue, from the word residual, means something left behind after the main thing is gone. Attention residue is what happens when you switch from one task to another. Part of your attention stays stuck on the previous task, like a stain that did not fully wash out. So even after you close your email and open your essay, a part of your brain is still processing that last message.
For English learners, this is crucial. If you check your phone between reading sentences, your comprehension drops significantly. Not because you are not smart, but because your attention was never fully there. The words you read while distracted simply do not embed themselves the same way as words you read in full concentration.
So here is a practice that Newport recommends and that applies directly to language learning. Start building what he calls a focus block. A period of time, even just 20 minutes to start, where you work on one thing with zero interruptions. Phone face down, notifications off. When the urge to switch arises, and it will, just notice it. Do not act on it. Let it pass. That act of resisting the urge is itself the training.
Okay, this is the one that is going to make some people defensive. Newport says, social media is optional. Not just something to use less of, optional. As in, you could simply not have it, and your professional life would probably improve.
And before anyone closes the video, let him make his case. Because Newport is not calling social media evil. He is saying that most people have never seriously asked whether it is actually worth the cost.
And that word cost is doing a lot of work here. We tend to think of costs in terms of money. But in this context, Newport is talking about opportunity cost. This is an important phrase in economics and in everyday professional life. Opportunity cost means the value of what you give up when you choose one thing over another. If you spend 2 hours scrolling, the opportunity cost is not just 2 hours. It is what you could have created, learned, or built in those 2 hours instead.
Newport introduces what he calls the any benefit mindset. This is the habit of justifying a tool simply because it has some benefit. Instagram keeps me connected with friends. LinkedIn is good for networking. Twitter keeps me informed. Therefore, I should use all of them, constantly, without limit.
But Newport says that is the wrong question. The right question is whether the benefit justifies the cost. And the cost of social media is not just time. It is the gradual erosion of your ability to concentrate. Every time you get a hit of novelty from a scroll, your brain adjusts its expectations. It starts craving that stimulation more frequently, and focus becomes harder and harder to sustain.
Here is a word that comes up in this discussion a lot: erode. To erode means to wear something down gradually, usually over a long period. You might say, years of stress eroded his confidence, or constant distraction erodes your ability to think deeply. It is a useful word because it captures the slow, almost invisible nature of the damage. You do not notice it happening. And then one day you realize your attention span has shrunk dramatically.
For English learners specifically, this matters enormously. Reading a long article in English, following a complex argument, understanding a native speaker talking at full speed. These are all deep cognitive tasks. They require sustained attention. And if your brain has been trained by years of social media to demand constant novelty, those tasks become significantly harder than they need to be.
Newport's recommendation is not necessarily to quit entirely. It is to be intentional. He suggests what he calls a digital minimalism approach. Choose your tools deliberately. Decide in advance when you will check social media and for how long. Outside of those windows, the apps are closed. You are not reacting. You are choosing. That shift alone begins to restore your capacity for deep focus.
Think about what becomes possible with even 5 extra hours of focused attention each week. That is the real conversation. Not whether social media is good or bad, but what you are trading it for.
Here is a claim I had to read twice. Newport says, boredom is a skill, and most of us are actively losing it.
What he means is that boredom is not just an unpleasant feeling to be escaped. It is actually a productive mental state. When you are bored, your mind wanders. And when your mind wanders without external pressure, it begins to make connections between ideas, solve problems it has been sitting with quietly, and process experiences that you have not had time to digest.
But we have made genuine boredom almost impossible to experience. Every quiet moment is immediately filled. Waiting for a friend? Phone out. Sitting in a queue? Phone out. Walking to class? Headphones in. We have eliminated every gap where boredom used to live. And with it, we have eliminated a significant source of insight and creativity.
Newport uses the word consolidate when talking about this. To consolidate means to bring things together and make them stronger or more stable. In the context of learning, consolidation is what happens when your brain takes new information and integrates it with what you already know. It is the process of turning short-term memory into long-term memory, and it largely happens during rest, during quiet, during boredom.
For English learners, this is a critical insight. Language acquisition is not just about input. It is about what your brain does with that input afterwards. When you finish reading an article in English or listening to a podcast, the learning does not stop the moment you close the app. Your brain keeps working. It is connecting new words to familiar concepts. It is rehearsing structures you encountered. It is building the neural pathways that make language feel natural.
But if you immediately fill that post-learning moment with more content, more scrolling, more stimulation, you interrupt that process. You are constantly pouring water into a glass that is already full. Nothing new can settle because there is no space for it.
So here is a practice from Newport that doubles as an English learning strategy. Once a day, take a 10 to 15-minute walk with no phone and no headphones. Just walk. Let your mind go wherever it wants. Think in English if you can. Notice what sentences come naturally. Notice what words you reach for. Some of your clearest, most fluent English will emerge in exactly these quiet spaces.
Okay, last big claim, and it is the one that sounds the most extreme. Newport says you should schedule every minute of your day. Not just your meetings, not just your important tasks, every single minute.
And my first reaction was, that sounds suffocating. That sounds like the opposite of living spontaneously.
And Newport addresses this directly. He says most people believe that unscheduled, open time feels like freedom, but in practice, unstructured time almost always defaults to whatever requires the least effort. Checking your phone, scrolling, the path of least resistance.
And that phrase, path of least resistance, is worth knowing. It comes from physics, where electricity or water always travels through the route that requires the least energy. In everyday English, we use it to describe the tendency to choose the easiest option rather than the best one. You might say, he always takes the path of least resistance at work, meaning he avoids anything difficult or uncomfortable. Newport's point is that without a schedule, your brain will always take that path.
His solution is called time block planning. At the start of each day, you divide your available time into blocks and give each block a clear purpose. Deep work blocks for your most cognitively demanding tasks. Shallow work blocks for email, admin, and logistics. And you treat those deep work blocks like non-negotiable appointments. They are sacred.
And Newport is clear that the schedule will break. Something urgent will come up. A meeting will run over. An unexpected problem will appear. That is fine. The point is not perfect adherence. The point is that every time the schedule breaks, you pause and consciously rebuild it for the remaining time. You stay intentional. You do not drift.
Here is a word that Newport uses throughout the book: deliberate. To be deliberate means to act with clear intention and careful thought, rather than by impulse or habit. A deliberate practice is one where you are fully conscious of what you are doing and why. You might say, she made a deliberate effort to improve her pronunciation, or his success was the result of years of deliberate practice. This word carries a lot of weight in professional English. Using it well signals maturity and self-awareness.
For English learners, time block planning is genuinely transformative. Most people study English in scattered fragments, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, whenever a spare moment appears. And spare moments are almost always shallow moments. You are tired, distracted, not fully present. That is not when deep learning happens.
But one protected block of 30 focused minutes per day, a real block with a start time, an end time, and a clear goal, will move your English further than 2 hours of fragmented, distracted study. Guard that block. Treat it as non-negotiable.
Before we close, let's do a quick vocabulary recap. 7 words and phrases from today that you can actually use.
Proxy, a substitute for something else. Busyness is a proxy for productivity. Indispensable, absolutely necessary, cannot be replaced. She became indispensable to the team. Opportunity cost, what you give up when you make a choice. Every hour on social media has an opportunity cost.
Erode, to wear something down gradually. Distraction erodes your ability to focus. Consolidate, to bring things together and make them stronger. Sleep helps consolidate new vocabulary. Path of least resistance, choosing the easiest option rather than the best one. Without a plan, we default to the path of least resistance.
And finally, deliberate, acting with clear intention. Deliberate practice, deliberate effort, deliberate choice. Use this word and people will notice.
Now, your action plan. 1 deep work block this week, 30 minutes. 1 English task, phone off. No switching, just that one thing.
And here is your challenge for the comments. We want you to write 3 to 5 sentences right here in the comments section in English about one area of your life where you know you have been doing shallow work instead of deep work. It could be your studies, your job, your English learning, anything. Write it out. Be honest. Using some of today's vocabulary is even better.
Writing in English, even just a few sentences, is itself a form of deep work. And we read every comment. So we will see you down there.
Go find Deep Work by Cal Newport. And remember, the ability to go deep is becoming rare. And rare things, done well, are always valuable.
We will see you in the next chapter.
See you in the next chapter.